Buenos dias. This is Maribel Diaz, and this is my presentation for the end of this blended cohort, or el fin del cohorte blended. Okay, so some challenges that I kind of anticipate going into if we ever decide to implement a blended style class for a Spanish class would be, or I have three of them, which are student accountability, authentic text, and then time. So student accountability, just because I have this on here as a challenge because I don't know if I assign something for homework, which I don't tend to assign homework often, but if I do assign homework and students don't complete it, how am I going to hold them accountable the following day? Or just within the class period. Towards the end of the school year, for example, students, especially seniors, tend to get extremely unmotivated. So they will just sit there and not do anything. They won't care that you're sitting next to them. They don't care that you're having a conversation with them or a meeting with them after class. They're just done. So I guess I need to find, I don't know if I should just accept that or if I should, I mean, I obviously probably will not just accept that, but I don't know I don't know how I'm going to address that, other than the different things that I have been doing, which is having those conversations with them, calling home, communicating with their parents, the students, so on, but it's just always going to be there, I guess. The other thing would be authentic text. So a lot of the text, finding it is just, it can be a nightmare because, especially now using Google Chrome, because if you type in, for example, Mexico's national anthem, you can type that in Spanish and you'll get information, or you'll get articles that are written by Spanish speakers for Spanish speakers. Spanish speakers, not speakers. Or you will also get some information from English speakers. So they'll type out an article in English, and then Google Chrome will either automatically translate it, or the website will translate it for them. So it's just kind of difficult to find authentic text. The other thing would be time. So again, it's not just so much about creating the material, but it's also like just finding it. So it goes along with the authentic text. It takes forever to find a video, for example, that's relevant to what your students are learning. Because, for example, if we're learning about food, and I type in food on YouTube or something, or la comida, I'm going to get a bunch of like people cooking food or describing food, but I literally have to go through so many videos to find something that's relevant or that's a level appropriate for my students. So there might be a person talking about food at a restaurant, but it's all food that students are not familiar with because of the culture, or it's just not part of their vocab. So it's time consuming trying to find all of this information, and then creating it is, again, also time consuming. It is worth it, but it is time consuming, and it does take a very long time, and it can be stressful sometimes. I will blend and improve units. So I did this action research last year for Spanish 2, and it was just to see whether there was a positive effect on module-based learning and academic achievement. And I did this because I wasn't like a lot of Spanish teachers, not just Spanish teachers, world language teachers in general, not just at the school, I'm talking about everywhere. They're kind of scared of technology. They refuse to use it. They're just like, no, it goes against everything because communication happens, it's spoken, and it's also like through body language, which I understand, but I feel like now if this is what our students are utilizing and this is what they like why not? Why not just try to use it? But anyway, the findings were, for the pre-test, my students scored an average of 25 out of 50 points, And for the post-test, the average was 45.1 out of 50 points. And this includes students with IEPs, students that like never say anything in my class, and I thought hated my class, and they were like, you know, in the survey telling me how much they love coming to my class because they knew what to expect. And the due dates or the assignments were appropriate for them, so or they were able to move at their own pace. So I think that I am going to be utilizing a lot of these things. For example, like ed puzzles, they are time consuming to create sometimes, but like once you have the hang of it, it's just kind of the same thing. But things like that, things that allowed my students to move at their own pace was so beneficial for not just myself, but for students too. The students that just get things, like you say it one time, sometimes you don't even say it out loud, you just think it, and they just are able to read your mind. You have those students sometimes in your classrooms, and you don't want them to be bored just because you have to go back and reteach something that someone else does not understand. You can have them work on their own thing. Meanwhile, I'm working with four group of students that, you know, they're just not getting it. So it's nice having that option for, you know, all types of learners, I guess. So having things like that, having discussions, using things like Flipgrid. I know that a lot of students are not going to like Flipgrid. I get that. But it does kind of provide just something else for them to use, you know, another form of communication for them. They can use the Padlets, and just using the discussion questions on Google Classroom, you know, like maybe they're not comfortable speaking out loud because, again, speaking in your native language it can be intimidating enough, but having to speak in another language that you're not 100% comfortable with, I mean, it gets crazy. So I totally understand. But I do want to use Blended to kind of help all of the learners, and I think that that's what it does. I think that it helps everyone. It doesn't allow for anyone to be left behind because, again, they're able to move at their own pace. At least that's how I had it set up. Possibilities, again, Flipgrid. So I have an assignment which is basically diaries, and students have to submit these twice a month. I think I'm just going to cut back and do it once a month though. And they have to talk about anything that they want, and they have to talk for anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes in Spanish, and that's it. Now the problem that I had was providing meaningful feedback for my students. They, you know, a lot of the times I would just feel rushed, or I would feel like I just am going to go through the rubric and give it back to them. And I don't think that that's fair. If they're obviously taking the time to do this and they're already nervous, you know, I do want to provide that feedback for them. So I think that I'm going to have students grade each other using rubrics, and then maybe once, you know, a month I'm going to focus on a specific class. So I'll focus on period 2 in September, you know, so on, just so that I'm able to kind of get to every student and provide that meaningful feedback that they deserve. The next thing is I'm going to continue to use Google Forms because it's a great way to create and to give formative and summative assessments. And I am going to be trying Google Calendar out. Again, this is kind of rolling out with the new Google Classroom format, so I want to see how I can use that maybe. But if not, I'll probably just stick to the daily agenda. Okay, before versus after. So before, I was really scared to try anything that I wasn't familiar with because I thought I was gonna like break it, or I was gonna be a horrible teacher and the students are gonna hate me. But after, like, I'm honestly willing to try anything as long as it's relevant to my students and the content. I hadn't even heard of Kahoot until I started working at Joliet, and the students were the ones that told me, like, you know, you should try some Kahoots. And I was like, what is that? Like, are you like cussing at me or something? No, I'm kidding. But I had no idea what they were talking about. And, you know, because of them, I use Kahoots sometimes. So, there's that. Again, I I was scared to use technology in a world language class. Like I thought that my colleagues were going to kind of like, it was going to be something that was frowned upon. And I just wasn't. I was kind of feeling like every other world language teacher, like you don't want technology to take over your classroom, because if that's the case, like I feel like a lot of teachers just don't want it to be like, oh, this is Rosetta Stone. Like if that's what we want, then might as well just buy the program and like not have to hire a world language teacher. And I think everyone's kind of intimidated and scared of that possibility. But like now I'm able to obviously see the benefits of utilizing technology in world language. But obviously there has to be a balance. Like it shouldn't just be all technology. It shouldn't just be all lecture. It shouldn't just be all one thing. Having these different options really helps the students learn, and it helps teaching not be boring for teachers. I also before thought that there were no tools for world language teachers. Like I used to see all these cool things for math teachers, English teachers, and I was just like, well, where's the stuff for Spanish? And now, like just being in this program, for example, I now see like, wow, like I can do all of this stuff with these tools that I have, and there's so many tools, like I didn't even know where to start sometimes. So there's that. That is my presentation. If you have any questions, obviously let me know. But other than that, that's the end. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.